The boom in true crime podcasts has seen millions of listeners become hooked, and sometimes they even see some of the world's biggest mysteries solved. Enter host of Ice Cold Case, Madison McGee. His story is focusing on a story a little closer to home. Her podcast is on a mission to solve the murder of her own father.
Ice Cold Case is the podcast looking into the unsolved murder of J.C. McGee 21 years ago.
We didn't tell her the truth.
This man died for no reason at all.
They let it go. They let him die.
But he knew somebody was going to get him.
So it's scary, sure.
There's no code of ethics out there.
I want to find the man who murdered your dad.
Well, 2 decades after his death, Madison is finally getting closer to discovering the truth, with Season 2 set to reveal new details she never saw coming. And Madison McGee joins us now live from LA. Welcome to the show, Madison.
Thank you for having me.
You were originally told that your father, J.C. McGee, died of a heart attack. But when did you find out that that was not the case?
When I was 16, I found out that my dad was actually murdered and didn't die of a heart attack through sort of this instinctual gut feeling. And I asked my mom a question about my dad's death, and that's when the truth was finally revealed.
What made you then want to sort of step up and take on this investigation yourself?
I think not having closure after 10 years of him being murdered was really something that hit hard. But then the longer it went and the less answers I was getting, I knew that I just had to start diving into the case files and looking for answers myself. And it was hard because cases don't really get solved from one person looking into it. You really need public attention and public pressure. And that's how I started this podcast.
So you've been getting some mixed reaction from your extended family. You obviously are of the opinion that some of them may know more than what they're telling you.
Yes, it's definitely a small town, and I think that people know a lot more than they're saying, specifically my family, and I really hope that the notoriety of this podcast helps put a little bit of pressure on them to come forward with what they know, come forward with the truth, and hopefully help me find the answers that I'm looking for.
It must have been very, very divisive for your family.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really wants skeletons coming out of the closet. Even if they're not implicated in this, no one really wants their secrets revealed. And so, unfortunately for me, this is just a necessary step to take to finding my dad's killer. I don't want to be dragging things out of the closet, but it just is what it is.
As a daughter, I absolutely understand that your need for answers, but some would think that working with the police would be a more beneficial route than a podcast. What made you go down the podcast route?
Sure. I did consult with the police before releasing the show. They are heard in interview bites within the show. Once the podcast was released, the goal was sort of to draw up tips if people had information. Maybe they weren't sure if the police were looking into this anymore, and through the podcast they would know that they were, and they could call in a tip. And I wanted to essentially put together some sort of tip line to coordinate with the police if I got any information. And since the release of the show, we have not spoken or really collaborated at all, and I haven't heard from them.
Okay. So true crime podcasts we've seen in the past is very successful in solving mysteries, and others create sort of legal issues along the way and create problems for the justice system. Does obstructing the outcome of your dad's killer concern you at all?
At this point, it's been so long, I don't feel like there were any new developments that I'm hindering by making my podcast. It's been almost 22 years. So if there was any information or anything that people were going to find, I think they would have done it by now.
How close do you feel that you're getting to finding your father's killer, Madison? Do you feel that through the first season of the podcast you've made any inroads?
I feel closer than ever. I think that sometimes when you think you have someone that you're sort of locking in on and you find out that it's not them, you can feel very distant from the answer. But sometimes ruling someone out gets you just as close because you can say definitively it's not them. And so now I feel closer than ever. Tips have been coming in from the press that this podcast has gotten, and I feel like I am very, very close to finding the answers.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on you. Madison Madison, thank you. Fascinating. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, investigating your own dad's possible murder. Well, Madison's podcast is called Ice Cold Case, and it is available right now.